Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's TBT Talks Live. A few apologies for the delay on this week's podcast. We've sort of had to push it back to today due to lack of availability earlier in the week. Steve's unavailable today, so I'll be hosting this week's podcast. I do believe Steve will be hosting a short sort of podcast in the next few days to preview the Palace game, so be sure to tune into that. Anyway, joining me this week are Craig Austin, who on Twitter is at AussieLFC24. Adam Haynes, who's at On The Volley, and Harry Sethi, who's at Harry_Sethi. I think we're going to start by running through the event. Come back to that, as depressing as it is. Craig, I'll come to you first. Do you think we deserved something more from the game? I mean, we started off pretty well. I mean, Henderson said in his post-match interview that it was a lot more like last season, the way we started, and we obviously took the lead. Do you think it was a bit unfortunate the way the eventual result was?
No, not really, mate. I think we got what we deserved. It's rightly so in saying we started well, and it was a lot more like last season with the quick tempo passing and the high press. But once we got the goal, it was almost like we seemed to panic, and within 6 minutes, Chelsea were level. And second half especially, I don't think Chelsea got out the first gear really, mate. If at any point they needed to go up through the gears to get the win, I think they could have done quite easily, and I think they were fully deserved of the 3 points at the end of the game, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly were. I think I agree there in that, I think first half it did take them a while to get out of first gear, really, and then when they did start to crank it up a bit, there was no stopping them, really. Harry, did you think sort of halfway through that first half that, were you slightly surprised by how well it was going? Did you think there was a decent chance of a result, especially when obviously we took the lead through Jan?
No, probably, unfortunately not. I mean, I'd probably side with Craig. I thought it was obvious, even though we did well in the first 20 minutes, it looked a bit more like ourselves. You could just see a couple of occasions them just running through our midfield and getting through, or nearly through on goal about 3 or 4 times. Just a few chances they missed, and final ball was poor. But you could see the danger was there, really. And I think Craig's right. After the first 20 minutes and after our goal, I think Mourinho put Hazard inside in the middle, and he was just running past, Gerrard and even Chan. You couldn't do. He played well. Couldn't stop him either. So I thought it was. I thought we played better than we have done to an extent, but I thought once they got the equaliser, it just you could see we were really deflated, and that's the confidence is fragile at the minute, isn't it? So it wasn't too unexpected.
Yeah, and Adam, if we just sort of run through a few of the talking points from the game, obviously we've mentioned Jan a few times, and he got his goal in the first half. He had a long-range effort that was deflected wide initially, and then he had another one that deflected in, and he started to sort of come out his shell a little bit. He was one of the players that didn't come out of the team following the Madrid game. And were you impressed by him? And do you think he can be quite an important player for us going forward?
Yeah, I was impressed by Jan, to be honest. The big thing is why he stands out so much at the minute is he's the only midfielder when he plays who, after he passes the ball, actually runs forward. And I think he actually, in the Chelsea game, he actually looked like he was up for the fight, actually up for the battle that was going to have to be in midfield. And I think, you hear like Craig and Harry saying that they just walked through our midfield. He was probably the only man who physically looked like he was willing to put himself about in that midfield battle. When it comes to being a big player, it depends if Brendan's willing to drop a certain player or not, or if he has the playtime opportunities. But he should have the opportunity. He should have the opportunity to make himself a bit of a more important player when it comes to the squad. But I still imagine him being on the bench or limited to the odd start. It depends on formation and sadly whether Gerrard plays or not. And it seems at the minute that Gerrard's undroppable, isn't it? So perhaps Chan is going to be that guy who has to try and break through and put pressure on Gerrard for his position.
Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of talking points at the moment about the team selection. I mean, obviously before the game, I think a lot of people were sort of expecting we'd had quite a good game over in Madrid, considering, I think a lot of people, when they saw that team, were expecting us to get battered, and we gave them a relatively good game. Torre had a good game in that Madrid game. Lucas did. Lallana did. There are a few shouts for them to carry on playing, but Roger said after the game it was the idea was to play Jan to sort of to try and combat Chelsea's sort of physicality in midfield. And so, Craig, do you think is Rodgers at fault a bit here in terms of the team selection? Would you have had a few of the other players in who'd had a good game against Madrid, i.e. Torre? I mean, obviously we saw for the Cahill goal, the positioning of the defenders, the two centre-backs, Skirtle and Lovren, was pretty laughable, to be honest. So, were you quite surprised to have seen him go back to the usual crop of players that have been playing?
He massively contradicted himself, mate, didn't he? He's based his whole Liverpool career around meritocracy, and players who played well will get the chance, and if you come into the side and you do well, then you're going to stay in the side. And he just completely went back on everything he's ever said, really, and made a bit of a mug of himself, and basically showed that he lied to us when he said that the players he picked out in Madrid were players who he thought could win that game, and that he wasn't resting the so-called better players of the side who've been massively out of form. And Colo Torre, how we could justify leaving him out, mate, it was criminal. He just shown that Lovren, for a better word, is pathetic, to be honest, mate. £20 million we paid for Dejan Lovren to come in to be a leader of the defence and to be the man who organises the defence. And Colo Torre, who's signed for nothing, who's basically been there to just be an ego in the dressing room, and someone who can G players up and just be a good character around the squad, has come in our biggest game in the last 5 years away to Real Madrid and made Dejan Lovren look like a Sunday League defender. The whole defence looked so much better for him being there, and then a few days later to drop him and put Lovren back in for Chelsea at home, I thought it was fucking ridiculous, mate, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think a lot of people totally agree with that. Well said. I think, Harry, I mean, the defence in general, a lot of people were surprised to see Johnson go back into the team because, again, Manquillo had a good game in midweek. But, the defence in general at the moment just still isn't happening. I mean, Rodgers has said that he's sort of changing the tactics a bit regarding, man marking at corners and stuff. And, we hadn't conceded for a corner for a few games, and then obviously there was the Cahill goal. And like I've just said, I'm not sure if you saw the picture of the positioning of Skirtle and Lovren for that, but it just wasn't right, really. And would you agree would you have played Torre for that game? And what do you think needs to change in defence?
Yeah, I mean, first up, I completely agree with everything Craig said about Torre. I mean, anybody who watched that match, that's really a phenomenal performance, from Colo Torre. He played out of position because Torre's always been a right centre back for most of his career. He played left centre back for 90 minutes against Cristiano Ronaldo and Gareth Bale for the latter stages. James Rodriguez, and he was superb. He was absolutely fantastic. You could see the leadership that he brought. This leadership that we've been waiting to see from Lovren, and I think you're probably going to see it for a while if we ever do. And you can see Torre. Everybody looked more comfortable with him around it. Even if he is maybe a bit too overconfident at times in his own ability, you could see Mignolet looked more confident. He helped. He talked. Was it Moreno through the game, or Manquillo as well gave him help. Skirtle looked a bit more confident, apart from a few nervy moments. So I was really disappointed not to see Torre get a look in against Chelsea. For everything that Craig said, about the meritocracy and how it's just he seems to be lying through his teeth at the moment. Rodgers, he fostered a good environment last season with. I know he had fewer players, so he didn't have as many options, but there was an environment last season about if you play well, you earn your place in the team. Flanagan embodied it, and it just seems that this season he's really just abandoned that idea. I mean, from what I've heard, Manquillo he did have a knock, so that's why Johnson came back in for that game. But you can see the level of effort that Moreno. I mean, I think that he is one shining light. We should probably highlight Moreno has been, apart from a few maybe individual errors that have been forced on him, he's been great, Moreno, and he looks like a good buy and one that's going to help us in the future. But the big problem with the defence is there is no leadership at the moment. Skirtle's never been a leader, and Lovren's not providing any of that leadership. They both look completely, incompatible to play with each other. That's affecting the goalkeeper. He's nervous. So I thought he's played well for the past few games, but unless there's a change of personnel, maybe with Saka when he gets fit and maybe coming back in, I don't think he can do any worse than Lovren's done, for sure. Unless there's a change of personnel or Rodgers really does realise that he needs to maybe change it around a bit, I can't see it improving at the moment because they seem stuck in a rut. I think Lovren against Chelsea at times was really, really, really eye-opening. I think it was that moment where he tried to chip it over Costa on the wing. I don't know a solution really at the moment for the defence. It just looks a shambles every single game that Lovren and Skirtle start.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. It has been exactly the same game after game, really. And Adam, after that, I mean, there was the Costa goal, the second half that obviously won them the game. Do you think was it another defensive problem, or it was a counter attack, was it? I mean, Hazard was drifting past players, a lot of our players the whole game really, which happens all the time to all teams. But eventually, there's a few times where Hazard was free in the first half, and his end product wasn't quite there. But for this, ball came out to Costa and he put it away just as he usually does. But do you think defence was at fault for any of that?
Yeah, to be honest. But I think the biggest issue with the Costa goal that I have is you have to take it back to when we last had the ball, and I think in the game we had 60% possession overall. We were so pointless on the ball, and then we kind of get into their half and we give the ball away, and then Chelsea do what Chelsea do, hit you on the counter attack, and you can say everything about Liverpool's defensive problems at the minute. We've got two clowns at centre back. I'm sorry, but we really do. Last year we were trying to flog off Skirtle to Zenit St. Petersburg and people like that. And the fact he scored 7 goals kind of hides how average he is. Really, he is an average centre back. When you look at that goal, even when we're defending and they're doing the right thing, they're backing off. But you look at the line, and you could do join the dots with it. You could draw like a dog with the join the dots between where they are. There's no uniform line of where you're going, right, okay, you push across here and I'll cover here. I've got this man, you've got this man. You're looking at it and you look at the back post, and if Costa doesn't score it and he wants to lay it back, it's like 2 men, in a line. You could easily have it. And poor Moreno, my biggest issue with the defence this year has been the amount of changes that have gone on. Bringing Johnson in, then Manquillo, then Johnson again. And the issue is that there's no settled back four, what I think, with changing the right back. Glenn's a clown. We all know that anyway. He's definitely one who needs to go. But you just look at it and you just think, who is telling, who's letting the mate behind him know you've got a man on you or you need to mark him? Because when we first signed Lovren, I remember hearing him tell Glenn to get up the fucking line, he said. And he just like, okay, it's a good thing he's organising. Since like game 2, game 3, he's been quiet. When I've gone to Anfield, you hear the back four talking. You hear Mignolet more than anybody, and that's rarely. The Costa goal for me just kind of sums up the fact that nobody talks to each other in that back four, and I don't know if it's a language barrier because you got a Spaniard, fucking he speaks solid English. Dejan Lovren speaks English, but obviously under pressure you go back to your main language being French. But I have no clue, but it's just pathetic. It's Aussie's word with our back four being pathetic, and some of the issues is the most fair way of actually describing it. And nobody picks up a man. It's awful. It's just embarrassing to watch.
I mean, just to point on the Costa goal, like people have laid into Johnson, for being out of position and I mean Coutinho does fill in and he tries to stop Azpilicueta, doesn't he, from crossing the ball. But I mean I don't think you can be too harsh on Coutinho for losing that physical battle. But for me, I mean you look at why Johnson's out of position, and yeah, he should be busting a gut to get back once he does see that they're switching the play. But he was moved inside to watch Hazard, and that's because there's so little faith in Gerrard at the moment to handle Hazard. I mean, we saw 4 or 5 times in the first half an hour Hazard just stroll past Gerrard, and that made Rodgers change tactics a bit. He's moving a right back inside to track Hazard. I mean, fundamentally, he shouldn't be there. Johnson should be struggling to get back into position a bit closer to the touchline than he was. He was in field watching Hazard, and you can see him look at Hazard, and you can see, should I go? Should I not go? But the second that ball was switched, he should have been busting a gut to get back there. And then that's the one thing you can rely on from Moreno and Manquillo, is that the effort is there. There might be a bit raw around the edges, but they put the shift in. And Johnson is just, I don't get how you can watch the performances that he's put in and you still think that he's a viable option. I mean, Enrique got bombed out after that was that performance against QPR, and rightly so. But unless it was a proper injury for Manquillo and he had no choice, I mean, Johnson offers so little. I mean, he did all right, but the effort levels in his game are just non-existent. And when you got centre backs like when we're pointing out we have, you need to give the fullbacks need to be giving as much protection as possible, and having him in the team is that's 3 out of 4 of the back 4 that are just huge weak links. And Chelsea just exploited it. Chelsea are a clever team. They exploit the weaknesses.
Absolutely, yeah, totally agree. And then sort of last point on the game, really, Craig, I'll come to you. I mean, there's lots of big shouts for a couple of penalties, but obviously the big one was towards the end, the Gary Cahill one, the handball. I think Rodgers made it clear at his post-match press conference they all thought it was a penalty. Did you?
Yeah, it was stonewall, mate, wasn't it? But
yeah,
it's clutching at straws. It's something that's gone against us, and it's epitome of Liverpool's luck at the minute. But it doesn't hide away from the fact of how the game went and the game finished as I think it rightly should have done. But it's just an epitome of Liverpool's luck at the minute. It was a stonewall penalty. Brendan Rodgers said it, Gary Cahill said it, but a dickhead in the middle with the whistle missed it, mate. And we have to move on. We have to live and learn from it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of the luck we're not getting at the moment, isn't it? And also, Craig, I'll stay with you. I mean, it's 3 losses in 1 week, obviously. Time to panic, do you think, or do you think, with things coming up in the future in terms of, maybe our next few games are a little more kind to us on paper and the return of Sturridge, are you panicking at the moment, or do you think things will eventually turn themselves around?
In the immediate aftermath, mate, it's easy to panic, but when you sit down and rationalise things and think about things with a sensible head, it's not as bad as things people are making out, mate. And Rodgers is making some silly decisions at the minute, and he's getting 1 or 2 things wrong, but it's not as wholesale terrible as what people are trying to make out of it at the minute. And it's because we were spoilt by the second half of last season, and we forgot what it was like to lose 1 game in a week, never mind 3 games in a week. So it is a bitter pill to swallow, mate, but we're not invincible, and we're not a side who's going to have things handed to us and who deserves to. So you just have to take the rough with the smooth, mate. And at the minute, unfortunately, it's a bit of a rough patch, but there is signs that things are going to turn, and Daniel Sturridge coming back into the side after the international break is going to be a massive, massive boost for the side, and hopefully we can rectify 1 or 2 problems that are going on at the back, and things will get better, mate. It's not a slippery slope that's going to continue going downwards, in my opinion, and it can't get much worse than what that week was and how that week felt. So for me, after the international break, get Daniel Sturridge back in the side and hopefully kick on and get on a run.
Yeah, and Adam, what about you? I mean, are you panicking at the moment, or you think things are going to turn themselves around pretty quickly with the likes of Sturridge coming back into the side?
I think Sturridge coming back is the watershed moment of whether we are in a crisis or not. I said after the Chelsea game that we were, because I was obviously quite peeved off. But for me, Liverpool are currently proving the statement of if you keep doing the same things and you're expecting a different result, then it's insanity. And Rodgers has seen the fact that when we play 4-3-3 or when we play one up top, it's just pointless. We just don't create enough. And if when Sturridge comes in, we were talking, before we went on air, saying that if he comes in and he drops Balotelli, then it will show that he's learned nothing. I think that is where the panic stations have to start. If Sturridge comes back and it is just one up top again, because my big issue is, we've been talking all the time about the meritocracy in the squad and things like that. We genuinely seem a bit of a shambles for a team at the minute, just because we don't know our best team, and then when we seem to see people who are performing terribly, we keep playing them. Which for me is, for Rodgers, I'm a massive fan of him, and obviously the morons who do the whole hashtag crap because they've got nothing better to do with their lives. But he was stubborn last year, and when he changed it, we did okay, and obviously kicked on and improved, and you have the second half of the season. It just, is he going to be stubborn again and not change it when he sees that the formation and the game plan isn't working? And I think that's where we start to panic.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of leads me nicely into the next points I was going to make. I mean, obviously, international break this weekend, so I sort of wanted to focus on a few sort of individuals, and we'll start with Sturridge. I mean, and Harry, do you think, does Sturridge back mean the return of the diamond? I mean, I think you would usually say yes, but I've noticed. I mean, Rodgers has been using players like Barini a bit more recently, but when he's played Barini, he's sort of had him in a wider role, cutting in at times, and he hasn't put him up front with Balotelli. So sometimes I wonder whether he feels that Balotelli, not mobile enough to play up front in a diamond. Same with Lambert. I mean, we haven't seen anything of Lambert. He could quite easily have, if he fancied Lambert, he could have quite easily put him up front with Balotelli, and hasn't. Should we expect Daniel Sturridge to turn everything around, and would you think we'll see a return to the diamond now with possibly him and Balotelli up front?
I hope we see a return to the diamond. I think the one glimmer that you hold on to is the Spurs game, obviously, with the diamond and Sturridge and Balotelli seem to link up well together. I think the main reason he's reluctant to use the diamond, or has been, is because he doesn't feel comfortable with how solid we are through the middle when we play with the diamond. We're quite easy to counter against, and that's I mean obviously I don't want to make this into an agenda or anything like that, but it does come back to Gerrard. You think of last season when we smashed Spurs 5-0. Gerrard had an injury. He wasn't playing that game. We played with three, who in the midfield who had a bit more energy. And then when Gerrard did come back, we had to find a new role for him, because it was clear that playing him in a 2 just wasn't working, even though it was with Lucas, or whether it was with Henderson, or it just wasn't working. And this season, what we've seen is every single game, without fail, the opposition manager, opposition team, they've targeted Gerrard. They've given him as little time on the ball as possible, because they know he can hurt you if you give him time and space. And every single game he's been targeted. I mean, we tried to move him forward and try to free him, find him more space on the pitch, but it's really not possible actually to give him that space for 90 minutes. He's going to be man-marked most games. It's going to happen, and that really disrupts how strong we are in midfield. I mean, the diamond is clearly our best formation. You get Sterling at the tip, and Balotelli and Sturridge. They should combine well. Balotelli looks, every time he plays in the 2 up front, you see he looks 10 times more useful, even though he hasn't scored. He looks more threatening. He gets into better positions and has better chances. So I hope we see that. But if I'm being perfectly honest, I can't see it working as well until we realise that Gerrard can't play every single game, and we mix it up a bit. I mean, I think the one thing Sturridge will solve is that he will score goals, and that's something that we're desperately lacking at the moment. He will score goals. He's got the pace and movement that will give a bit of joy to Coutinho and maybe Lallana and those creative players. And he doesn't make Balotelli can't make those runs. He doesn't really it's not part of his game. So, and maybe he helps Balotelli. Takes the pressure off Balotelli, gives him more room, and Balotelli can finally net that goal and get started really without overwhelming pressure on him. But I agree with what you said. If Sturridge comes back and we go back to a 4-2-3-1 with him up front, there's no point really, because it illustrates Rodgers is not learning from his mistakes, and really that's what I think is going to be the turning point of the season. Not Sturridge coming back or players who might give us a spark. It's going to be Rodgers realizing what does and doesn't work. And up until now, he really hasn't shown much of a sign that he's figured out what works and doesn't work with our midfield or our defence. So I think the turning point of the season is completely up to Rodgers. It's not down to Sturridge, and we shouldn't put that pressure on him to turn our season around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and Craig, I'll come to you. I mean, what's changed since the Spurs game? In that's where, I mean, the early signs with that diamond with Balotelli and Sturridge together were very good against Spurs. Obviously, a 3-0 win. Gerrard was playing holding midfield that day, and we did him 3-0, and it was just like last season. First of all, what do you think's changed since then? And also, I'm not sure if you've seen this week, we've obviously got Divock Origi scheduled to be coming in for next season, but there's been some talk that he might come in January instead, and there's been a few comments from him saying he'd quite like to come sooner rather than later. So would you be up for that? And obviously, as I say, what do you think's changed since that Spurs 3-0 win?
The obvious factor is the absence of Daniel Sturridge, mate, since the injury picked up away on international duty, and at the time it was almost as if Brendan Rodgers didn't trust the personnel that he had at his disposal to continue playing the diamond and continue playing two up front. So and we've had to almost resort to accepting this shift 4-2-3-1 game in, game out, with Balotelli up front on his own, who's a striker that everyone with any kind of football knowledge understands cannot play up front alone, and we haven't had the runs from midfield getting beyond them to even partly make it work with Balotelli playing up front on his own. So that's the main factor in what's gone wrong, because Daniel Sturridge and Balotelli, although it was only that one game, they showed quite a lot of promise in that one game, that they could be quite a good partnership, and they had quite a good understanding of each other. So it's been very disappointing that we've been without Daniel Sturridge for as long as we have. But just it's crazy that missing one player has caused such detrimental effect to everybody else in the side and the way things have been going. And hopefully once he's back, it hopefully will change. And not too much other than that's changed. It's just a massive lack of confidence, I think, and one mistake leading to another mistake, and kind of the fans are expecting a mistake, which is putting a lot of pressure on the players when in and around games. And so the atmosphere, especially in this Chelsea game, it was horrible to be in, to be honest. And one mistake and 40,000 people are jumping on the players' backs, and although the footballers are very well looked after and very well paid, and the human beings at the end of the day, mate, and human beings make mistakes. And when you've got that many people jumping on your back straight away with under that much pressure, it's no surprise to me that mistakes are happening. Everyone just needs to calm down and regather ourselves and become a unit again as fans as well as a team, and push together as one instead of being two separates, and we will notice a massive difference. And as for the league, mate, it pisses me off that we've went into the season with basically two strikers who Brendan Rodgers trusted. One of them, it could be argued, wasn't even Brendan Rodgers' signing, which I hope wasn't the case. But it just seems ludicrous that we could have put ourselves in that position while Daniel Sturridge is being out, and we've needed a kind of like-for-like player, a player who's fast, who's powerful, who's good on the ball, who can finish. and we've got him playing for another side. It baffles me, to be honest, that if Brendan Rodgers has this much trust and has this much faith in Divock Origi, why we didn't go all out and spend that extra few £1 million to bring him in immediately. And we might not have been in the position that we're in now. I'm not saying 100% we wouldn't have been, but who knows, if we had that kind of player at our disposal, that we might not have been in this situation. And the supposed quotes this week that he wants to come earlier and stuff, he's kind of, although it may be just covering his own back, but really kind of squashed himself, didn't he, on his own Twitter account, saying he's committed to Leo till the end of the season and he's looking to join up with Liverpool next season. But if the option's there for Liverpool to do it in January, then for me, mate, it's an absolute no-brainer.
Yeah, I'd agree. And Adam, I mean, Ozzy's talked there about sort of the traits of Origi and that he can be similar to Daniel Sturridge. Do you think, it could work as a partnership? I was talking earlier, where I was saying about how maybe Lambert and Barini and Balotelli maybe aren't so suited for a diamond. Do you think Sturridge and Origi, with their movement and they're both pretty creative players as well, make a lot of space for others with their movement? Do you think that's a partnership that we can look forward to?
Yeah, I do think it'll be quite a good partnership to actually see, because they could drag defences all over the place. The thing is, when Origi comes in, is what is the point in Balotelli? Signing Balotelli was pointless anyway. I think, as much as I'm not a fan of Balotelli, I'm pretty sure everyone knows that. It was a bad signing. We know that Sturridge cannot stay fit. He has hamstring problems. He has issues. So why did we sign a player who can't play up front on his own? Because we went to the Bernabeu and we played a lad who we were trying to flog to QPR on the last day of the season for a cut price, and it just kind of sums up the fact that up front, after selling Suarez, we're a mess. We've got Sturridge. Yeah, we know we want to keep Sturridge. He's a very good player. But then when Origi comes in, is Balotelli like a stopgap until Origi comes? Or obviously, Craig's alluded to, we got Origi cheaper because we agreed to loan him back for a year. But it's just madness. The issue that we have up front is, next season Origi and Sturridge, I think, will terrorise defences. The movement, when you watch Origi and Sturridge movement, is fantastic, and the speed, getting on the counter attack. But then we're going to be posed with the issue is we've got Balotelli, who's on a decent wage. We paid 16 million or something like that for him. What are we going to do with him? Are we going to play 3 up top and just sack off actually defending, carry on with the Roy of the Rovers type football? And this is the thing that I think Craig's saying about, if it's Rodgers signing or not, we do actually need to look at whoever's signing these players, because there's no foresight in it of what we're going to do with some of these players. I honestly think Balotelli will be gone by the end of next season. I don't think it'll work, and I don't think he's the player that everyone thinks he is. But
I think the only thing we need to hope with Balotelli is, obviously, as Craig said and as Harry said, is that he'll be better up front with a partner. I mean, obviously at Man City he played a lot of the time. He had, a partner with him, whether it be Dzeko and he sometimes even played off the left as in a free role. And also, so I think that's Balotelli's last hope, really. So I just have to wait and see what happens there. Go on.
Sorry, Jack, to go. I think the issue is that if you're going to have a striker who plays in a 2, that's fine. There's still a lot of strikers around who has to play in a 2, but he doesn't even create for the other person. If you look at his assists record, it's woeful. He has an assist for City because he fell on his arse. That's an assist. He doesn't make for other people. So say, he does need to play in a 2. He doesn't have the movement of a player who can play up front on his own. But if you're going to play in a 2, you've also got to make something for your strike partner, and that's my issue with Balotelli, that he doesn't do that.
Yeah. Okay, so Harry, I mean, it's early days yet, but do you feel that we need additions in January in terms of, do we need? I mean, we've got enough new players who you could say are settling in right now. Likes of Markovic, and Jan, you could have said. Do you think we've got enough sort of new players, or do we need to freshen things up? I mean, there's talk of Dumbia from CSKA Moscow, and and I think the other one was Maxi Pereira at the right back, which seems a strange one. Probably cheap links at the moment. I mean, there's obviously a few links to Dele Alli, as there has been for about a year, and the young Odegaard, the young 15-year-old. So would you be looking for fresh faces and in January, and what sort of areas?
Yeah, I think it couldn't hurt, could it, to bring in a few. I think the obvious areas would be, maybe if we do feel we need more right back and we're looking to get rid of Johnson in January, if that's possible, then get someone in at right back who's a bit more experienced than Manquillo and give him a bit more help. Actually does the job as well. I think if it's possible, look for a right centre back in January, because as much as we can admit that Lovren's been a disaster so far, you can't expect we're going to look to flog him off. So all you can really hope for is that we're going to maybe look to get a bit more competition at right centre back, because Skirtle at the moment really doesn't have any competition, because Toure can put in a performance like we've just seen and he's not getting back in the team. So I think we need to look there maybe, and I'd also, I mean, apart from the obvious up front, if we can get Origi in, perhaps that's a good option. But he is, although he's got plenty of talent, he is only 19, so I wouldn't want to put too much pressure on him to rescue our season. So maybe get a proven goal scorer. I mean, the Doumbia link's a bit interesting, but he's a proven goal scorer. He has got pace, even though he might be 42 and pretending he's 26. So you don't know what to make of that too much. But I'd also go for a midfielder. To be honest, I'd look for another defensive-minded midfielder to add into the throw, to maybe freshen the midfield up, give us a bit more strength there. I mean, one thing you notice against Chelsea is, apart from Chan, we look woefully out-muscled in that game, and they look like men against boys at times. So I'll try and get a bit more strength in midfield. I don't think we're going to do anything with Mignolet. I think we'll, if we're going to change the goalkeeper, I think we'll wait now till the end of the season. And I did want to say, I noticed in the last couple of games, Mignolet seemed to be showing signs of being a bit better, a bit more proactive in his game. I'm sure there'll be some errors still there, but he looked like he's got a bit more confidence back. Just to touch on Balotelli, I mean, I think obviously he's not, the people here aren't a fan of him, but I think I don't think he's played atrociously for us at all. I mean, obviously he needs to score goals, and he's never had a great record there from open play, but I think he's useful for us. I think he, unlike Lambert, who I don't think is a short-term option, Balotelli does, he does hold the ball up very, very well. It's one thing he does do. And if you've got pace, Origi, Sturridge, Sterling back, that can become very, very useful quite quickly. I mean, you mentioned his assist record's poor, but that ability to hold the ball up and allow others to come into play, if you're playing on the counter, which we did last season, that's very useful. It is very, very useful. So I really think we'll see a lot more Balotelli once Sturridge comes back, and if we eventually do revert to the diamond, because he might not be the player some people talk him up to be, but he has got plenty to offer, that in the physical side of the game, and some of that intelligence that he does show. But in January, it's hard to know what we'll do. I mean, after spending that much money, will the owners back Rodgers? I mean, the biggest thing is who do we trust to spend money at the moment, really, after the window. I mean, and the targets we've made, who do you trust? So I think we do need to make some signings, but whether we will really splash the cash, I think it remains to be seen, mate.
Yeah, indeed. As I said, we sort of wanted to focus on a few individuals, and the last one I think we'll look at is Philippe Coutinho. Now, Craig, I mean, he's obviously got his way back into the Brazil squad this season. He's been in there a few times now. But, he was fantastic in pre-season. Everyone sort of thought with Suarez going that he might kick on, but he's still showing a lot of inconsistency. Whether that's down to sort of playing position is often, I mean, the Chelsea game he played on the right. He had a very good game, I thought, against Chelsea, and even then he was dragged off. He's played as a number 10, just behind the striker. He's played further back as a natural centre midfielder. Is he a player you think needs to be in the Liverpool lineup every week? And what do you think is his best position?
In the immediate, mate, I think he deserves to be in the side every week at the minute. The last 3 or 4 games, especially, mate. Some of his plays been breathtaking, and the way he started the game against Chelsea, he was untouchable, and he was the one player who you looked, especially second half, who you were looking to try and make something happen and to try and spark Liverpool into life. And as you say, he's the one who seems to be the scapegoat for Brendan Rodgers, who's the first one who gets the shepherd's hook more often than not. And for the first time, especially that I can remember under Brendan Rodgers, the crowd showed its displeasure at the substitution made by the reaction and the booing of the substitution, and it was a very strange one. And Philippe Coutinho, he's a player who's blown hot and cold for a lot of his time at Liverpool, but in my personal opinion, he's blown hot a lot more than he's blown cold, and it just seems crazy that a player who's playing so well at the moment, how he's not guaranteed to be starting every week at the minute. And for me, his best position is on the left of the diamond, mate, because although he's only small in stature, his work rate's phenomenal, and he's not pushed off the ball or bullied by anyone, mate. He for the size, the strength of him, it's ridiculous, if I'm honest. And I love it when he's on the left side of the diamond with Sterling in the 10, mate, because the two of them interchange so well and they understand each other's game, and they can swap positions, and defenders find it so hard to pick the two of them up, mate, when the two of them are playing in those positions. So I'm hoping to God then we can get 2 strikers up at the top of the pitch. We'll go back to that, because it served us so well the back end of last season.
Yeah, I'd agree. I definitely think that's his best position. I mean, Adam, it was interesting, sort of bit of the England game yesterday, and Lallana was playing as a centre mid in a diamond, sort of in that role. Craig was on about there, sort of on the left side of a diamond with Wilshere behind and Henderson next to him. Now, could that be a way we could fit in maybe both Lallana and Coutinho? And we've obviously got Sterling as well, but if you're looking for creativity at the moment, would you possibly look at having both Lallana and Coutinho? Because at the end of the day, we're not scoring goals, and to score goals, you need to create chances. So, would that be something you'd look at?
I do think it's interesting that we haven't really played Lallana and Coutinho much together, and you could try that of putting Lallana on the left-hand side of the midfield and Coutinho in the 10. The issue is although we need to kind of create things to actually score goals, we also need to just stop leaking goals. And is Lallana going to give you the defensive cover that you need? You kind of have to think on that one, if you got the stability in the midfield there to actually help out the back four. I'm not sure, but I kind of said before when we were having a little chat that Lallana and Coutinho are alongside Chan, but for their roles of actually going forward, being creative midfielders, it's the fact that when they get the ball, they move forward, for me, or they actually get into positions where they can receive the ball and then be direct, come forward with it. That could be helpful, and perhaps playing both of them would help Liverpool be a little bit more direct, actually be able to make some of these half chances into decent chances where we can take them and score goals. But I think the issue of playing Lallana and Coutinho, Lallana in that role, is who's covering Gerrard. And Lallana does run about, but he's not a natural centre mid, box to box type player. He is a further forward player, and that's something you'd have to really consider.
Indeed. Harry, just finally, I mean, what are your thoughts on Coutinho? I mean, obviously everything we've said, and is he a player that can really push on for Liverpool in the coming years and become someone that Liverpool fans remember for a long time?
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of Coutinho. Really enjoyed him in pre-season, and yeah, it took a bit of time to get into things when the season started. But I think you can see the last couple of games he's actually played quite well. But I think the lack of options up front, the lack of pace we've had up front, has really limited what he can do to an extent. I think his best position is probably centre mid. I think he likes it when he's a bit deeper, so he's got more of the pitch to look at and thread those passes through. I think when he's a bit further forward, he seems to force it too much. So I think eventually that's where he should play, centre midfield. And I think you'll see as soon as Sturridge comes back, he loves playing with Sturridge, and that link up started almost immediately, didn't it? When they first signed in January a couple of seasons ago, they seem to know each other's game very, very quickly. So Sturridge makes sort of runs that Coutinho loves to find. So I think Coutinho's got a big part to play this season, actually. Easily our most creative player, for all Lallana's deafness and the guile he's got. I don't think he's going to be as creative as Coutinho could be for us. So I think Coutinho's got a big part to play this season and in the future. I mean, I hope we nail him down to a new contract soon. He needs to play with pace, doesn't he? So the sooner we can get Sterling and Sturridge back in their best positions and Coutinho feeding them, the better. Really, I think he's got a big role to play, and there's huge talent there. I mean, if you can get rid of the inconsistency, which is what you expect when players get older, and if you can learn to shoot on target, which there's signs that he's getting better at that side of football, then I think he could be a really big player for us. Actually, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt in his talent, and we just hope that he can kick on and become the player we all know he probably can be. Okay, I think we'll hold it there. Like I say, next game's Palace, and Steve's looking at doing a small podcast in a couple of days' time to preview that, so we won't go over that now. But so yeah, we're back to proper football next week. Not a big fan of all this international break stuff. Okay, so thanks for joining us. And like I say, still be with you in a few days' time to preview the Palace game. See you then.